Good morning. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi concludes her historic trip to Taiwan despite mounting threats from the Chinese Communist regime. We speak to an expert to find out what this will do to U.S.-China relations.
And we take a look at projected winners from Tuesday's primaries, focusing on the Senate and governor races in Michigan, Arizona, and Missouri.
Kansas votes on abortion access. Find out what voters have to say about amending the state's constitution to restrict the procedure.
A convenience store owner in California shoots an armed robber with a shotgun. 3 men in their 20s have been arrested in connection to the incident. The fourth is in critical condition. Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, and I'm Evelyn Lee. Today is the 3rd of August, and on this Wednesday morning, the world watched House Speaker Nancy Pelosi depart from Taiwan. Meanwhile, China is preparing for live fire drills around the island. The trip has put more strain on the relationship between U.S. and China. That's being reflected on the global market as U.S. stocks fell on Tuesday. Pelosi met with President Tsai Ing-wen and the Taiwan legislature, and she received a Medal of Honor on behalf of Congress. Accompanying her is Congressman Gregory Meeks, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and 5 other lawmakers. She also met with activists in Taiwan before she left. NTD's Shi-Wen Rong has more.
U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi departs from Taipei today as part of her Asia trip. She is the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit Taiwan in 25 years.
America made a bedrock promise to always stand with Taiwan.
Despite the escalating threats from the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, Pelosi chose to meet with Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, calling for closer cooperation.
And we want Taiwan to always have freedom with security. And we're not backing away from that. And now, more than ever, America's solidarity with Taiwan is crucial, and that is the message we are bringing here today.
Addressing Taiwanese lawmakers, Pelosi says,
"We commend Taiwan for being one of the freest societies in the world."
Touching down in Taipei late Tuesday night, the delegation was warmly greeted, while the Chinese military conducted live fire exercises around Taiwan, including in one zone that violated Taiwan's territorial water, and warning the U.S. that it will pay the price for undermining China's interests.
We will take whatever we can to respond and to protect, to safeguard our sovereignty, territorial integrity. And our response will be very firm, strong, and forceful.
Flying far from Chinese military presence, Pelosi's journey to Taiwan was tracked by nearly 3 million people online. Back home, 26 lawmakers voiced their support for the speaker, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I believe she has every right to go.
The White House initially opposed the trip out of safety concerns.
The military thinks it's not a good idea right now.
Now the administration says the speaker is free to visit where she wants.
There's no violation of any sovereignty issues here.
Still maintaining the one China policy toward Taiwan, the United States follows strategic ambiguity. That means remaining unclear if the U.S. would defend Taiwan militarily should China invade. However, President Biden has on 3 occasions answered yes, only for the White House to walk it back hours later.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
Now the question is, what will happen to Taiwan after the visit, as threats from the CCP's military continue to mount?
The speaker's visit also prompted the Chinese regime to bar 100-plus Taiwanese food exporters. That's an attempt to financially pressure the Taiwanese government. Meanwhile, pressure from the Chinese military is also growing. The live fire exercise will take place just 1 day after the House Speaker is leaving from Thursday to Sunday, with one zone violating Taiwan's territorial water. The world is watching the escalation closely, so we want to bring in Dr. Dennis Wang. He's an associate professor of political science at Sam Houston State University. There you go.
Hi,
It's good to
morning,
have you this
everyone.
morning. Thank you. I want to start our conversation with the U.S.-China relationship. A while back, Antony Blinken called it one of the most complex and consequential relationships of any that we have in the world today. So what are the implications of Pelosi's visit in that regard?
Yes, well, Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan is a very complicated situation, like we described earlier. The situation here, well, the U.S.-China tension is actually escalated in recent years, and this visit actually makes this more complicated as we try to show a very strong commitment to Taiwan, the U.S. side, but also we try to avoid the real military conflict against China. So, like I said, it's a very complicated situation. The real implication is that we have to pay very close attention to the future U.S.-China relations. Apparently, in China's side, the anti-U.S. sentiment maybe get worse. And from U.S. perspective, we may encounter a very difficult situation when we start have another conversation with China. Like China has sent a very strong message. They will do whatever it takes to show their firm stance. So what will happen in the next couple of months or maybe years is that China will do a lot of things against U.S. if the situation gets worse. And I will say Taiwan will basically face a very difficult situation in the next few months and couple of years maybe.
And so you're mentioning that things might get much more difficult. So I'm wondering, because there are conflicting views about this, right? Many question whether there was a real benefit to this visit, or if it was just worth it. What do you think?
Yes, look at the bright side. Well, yes, Taiwan will be benefit from this visit from one perspective, which is Speaker Pelosi basically open the door for other political leaders from the world, from freedom world to visit Taiwan, because she kind of set up the precedents for future. But again, from the U.S. perspective, we can also benefit from this trip. Well, if you look at the bright side, which is this move is kind of brave. A lot of people would argue it's maybe dangerous, but it's brave move. Why? Because it actually pushed the limit between U.S.-China. We always try to know what's the real Taiwan policy from the China's perspective. We don't know. We like to know the guardrail. People says we like to know the guardrail. We like to know the bottom line. Where's the red line? So this move actually pushed this argument, pushed this question to the limit. So afterwards, after this visit, the Chinese response will give us a better idea how to deal with China in the future. So like I said, look at the bright side. There are some benefits still from this trip. But again, we have to be prepared.
Some very good points and interesting. And we see that China now is, of course, taking some measures like fighter jets close to the median line or live military drills. But do you think Taiwan in the near future, has to brace itself for more repercussions?
Yes, apparently, like Evelyn, you mentioned, there are a couple means and actions has already taken by China. Well, China has suspended product imports to China, and that will have a very strong signal and very strong consequences to Taiwan, because the U.S. or the Taiwan-China trade actually is very important to Taiwan. Over 45% of trade of Taiwan is actually with China. So this kind of suspend and the ban will hurt Taiwan's trade. And in the future, as you can imagine, the military live drill will continue. It will kind of bring a dangerous situation, and also will make a lot of countries, other trade partners around the world, start considering, maybe doing business, whether they should continue doing business with Taiwan. They may concern about that. So that's something Taiwan need to be aware and need to be prepared. And we, as an American, we can certainly help Taiwan in terms of increasing the trade opportunity and trade exchange products with Taiwan. Maybe beside a free FTA with Taiwan is something we can consider now.
Right, certainly. And I wonder, because you mentioned a lot of trade, but I also wonder on the other side, we just heard the words forceful from the Chinese side. And so I'm wondering, do you see there is a chance of confrontation?
The confrontation at this moment maybe not, maybe low. The percentage may be low because at this moment, well, I would say before 2027, the U.S.-China in terms of military confrontation, the American side still has an advantage. So before 2027, China will be very cautious using military confrontation or military means because they know they are not capable at this moment. But I have to say, at this moment, we still have benefit, we still have advantage, but they are catching up. The Chinese government is do whatever it takes to catching up with us militarily. So we have to be very careful about this.
Absolutely.
Taiwan also, they need to be prepared.
And we will definitely be watching those developments that you mentioned closely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Dr. Dennis Wang.
Thank you.
According to Washington Post reporter Josh Rogan, some American officials believe that within the Chinese regime, some are eager to use Pelosi's trip as an excuse to change the current layout across Taiwan and China. But Chinese leader Xi Jinping is trying to avoid actual conflict with the U.S.
And almost 5 million people were watching Pelosi's trip live streaming on Weibo. Weibo is China's version of Twitter, but the live stream shut down at the critical moment of her landing. Some netizens joked on WeChat, so Pelosi gets to visit Taiwan tonight and I can't even visit Weibo. Others mocked the regime, calling it a military bluff and saying it was like watching Chinese men's football, 90 minutes long, but not one single shot.
The Foreign Affairs Committee of Britain's House of Commons is planning a visit to Taiwan. A previous trip was postponed due to one member of the delegation testing positive for COVID-19. According to media reports, the trip will probably happen in November or early December this year. Initial visit plans were intended to show Britain's support for Taiwan. Taiwan faces mounting pressure from China, which considers the democratically governed island its own territory. The report comes following a deteriorating relationship between China and Britain. UK leadership candidates Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are demonstrating a tough stance on China as they face off to replace Boris Johnson as Britain's next prime minister.
And back in the U.S., 5 states held their primary elections yesterday. We focus in on the Senate races in Missouri and Arizona and the governor races in Arizona and Michigan. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the projected winners.
You guys ready to take this country back? Thank you.
Missouri's Senate race has Eric Schmidt as the projected winner of the Republican primary.
And I am honored to be your nominee for the United States Senate.
Schmidt has double the votes of his closest competitors.
Not too far from here, I worked at Grant's Farm while in college, giving tours and taking out the trash. And don't we need a little bit more of that in Washington right now?
Schmidt is currently Missouri's Attorney General. He will face off against Trudy Busch Valentine, the winner of Missouri's Democratic Senate primary in the general election. In Arizona, Trump-endorsed Blake Masters is leading in the Republican Senate primary. He will face incumbent Democrat Senator Mark Kelly in November if he wins. Senator Kelly ran unopposed. In the tight race for Arizona governor, Trump-endorsed former news anchor Kari Lake has a slim lead over Karen Taylor Robson for Republicans. Robson is backed by former Vice President Mike Pence. On the Democratic side, Katie Hobbs is the definitive winner with over 70% of the vote. Hobbs is currently Arizona's Secretary of State. And over in Michigan, Tudor Dixon doubled the votes of her closest contenders with Trump's endorsement, claiming the Republican nomination. Dixon is a businesswoman and online news anchor. Her platform includes expanding school choice and empowering parents. She opposed COVID-19 lockdowns at schools. Dixon is also proposing armed security in schools and eliminating the state's personal income tax. Incumbent Governor Gretchen Whitmer ran uncontested for Democrats. She's faced extensive criticism from conservatives over her coronavirus lockdown orders. Whitmer has raised nearly $30 million since being elected in 2018. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The battle for governor in Michigan is really starting to revolve around the topic of abortion. Whitmer is making the U.S. Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade a focal point of her re-election campaign.
On the other hand, Dixon supports a near total ban on abortion. She says exceptions should be made only in cases when the mother's life is at risk. And speaking of abortion, Kansas voters have decided to keep abortion access in the state. A ballot question proposed an amendment to the state's constitution that would have further prevented the procedure. Around 60% of voters said no. Here's what some Kansans had to say about the issue.
We definitely have an uptick in voter registration and people getting out to vote.
I think it's ridiculous that in 2022 I'm having to vote for my own personal rights. So, yeah, that's about as nice as I can say it.
The people that are losing life have no voice if people like me don't speak for them.
Abortion is sin. It is taking a life. If people want to be promiscuous and end up getting pregnant, that's a result of the sin that they've already done. They don't need to commit a second sin.
The vote was the first statewide referendum on abortion since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade decision in June. Patients travel to Kansas for abortions from Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and other states that have limited access to or ban the procedure. A spokesperson for the Trust Women Abortion Clinic in Wichita says around 60% of their abortion patients are from out of state. The ballot question is seen as an early indicator of whether the topic of abortion will be a motivating factor for voters in November's midterms. Kentucky, California, Vermont, and possibly Michigan will have abortion on the ballot this fall.
The United States sued Idaho on Tuesday to block a state law that it says imposes a near absolute ban on abortion. That marks its first legal challenge to state abortion laws since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
The lawsuit alleges that Idaho's abortion ban, which would make it a felony to perform an abortion in most circumstances, violates the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. It's a federal law that compels hospitals receiving federal funds to provide emergency medical care. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced the lawsuit on Tuesday.
Today, the Justice Department's message is clear. It does not matter what state a hospital subject to EMTALA operates in. If a patient comes into the emergency room with a medical emergency jeopardizing the patient's life or health, the hospital must provide the treatment necessary to stabilize that patient. This includes abortion when that is the necessary treatment.
About half of the country's 50 states have or are expected to ban or curtail abortions now that Roe has been overturned, including Idaho, which had also adopted a so-called trigger law restricting abortion in case such a decision was ever made. The U.S. is now seeking a preliminary and permanent injunction against Idaho's latest proposed law, and is also asking a court to bar Idaho from criminalizing doctors if they perform an emergency abortion. In a statement on Twitter, Idaho's Republican Governor Brad Little accused the Justice Department of interfering with state sovereignty and called it, quote, another example of President Joe Biden overreaching yet again. The U.S. lawsuit comes just a day before the Idaho Supreme Court is due to hear arguments on the state abortion law, which is set to take effect on August 25th.
Pregnant mothers in Georgia can now get tax credits for unborn children. It's part of the state's heartbeat abortion law, whose main purpose is to limit when women can get the procedure. But the law also recognizes a fetus as a life as soon as a heartbeat is detected. That means mothers can claim a personal exemption of $3,000 for each unborn child. Georgia's Department of Revenue confirmed those exemptions will be honored on 2022 tax returns.
The Senate passed a bill yesterday that will expand health care benefits for veterans exposed to toxic fumes from burn pits. The PACT Act passed the House in July, but Senate Republicans blocked it last week. That's because they wanted amendments that would add cost controls. The action led to protests with a group of veterans and their families camping out at the Capitol. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer then announced they reached a deal Tuesday, shortly before it passed the chamber. It now heads to the president's desk for his signature.
And just ahead, a convenience store owner fires a shotgun at a man attempting to rob his store in California. The man is now in the hospital in critical condition. 3 others have been arrested. And America's Hall of Fame broadcaster Vin Scully died Tuesday night at age 94 with a stunning career of 67 years. Find out more right here on NTD News.
This is Lee Smith from Over the Target. I'm here to announce a brand new show available only on Epoch TV, and that's Over the Target Live. Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. For an hour each Thursday starting at 9, we'll be speaking with guests live, and I'll be taking questions from you live as well, touching on all the themes, topics, subjects, and issues that Over the Target is known for, from foreign policy and national security to this, our great American life. I'll look forward to seeing you soon, and I'll look forward to hearing from you soon, too. Thursday nights at 9 for Over the Target Live. I'm Lee Smith. Thanks.
Welcome back. An 80-year-old convenience store owner in California shoots an armed man trying to rob his store. Surveillance footage shows several people arriving in a black SUV at the Norco Market and Liquor in the early morning on Sunday. One of the would-be robbers enters the store with a rifle drawn. Seconds later, the store owner steps behind a glass display case with a shotgun and fires a single shot. One of the men then runs out of the store repeatedly shouting, "He shot my arm off." 4 suspects were located shortly after at a nearby hospital where one was receiving treatment for a gunshot wound. The suspect's vehicle was later determined to have been stolen. Police arrested 3 men in their 20s. A statement from the local sheriff's department says bail was set at $500,000. The 4th suspect is reported to be in critical but stable condition and will be booked into the Riverside County Jail upon release. The store owner suffered a heart attack after the attempted robbery. He was released from the hospital and is now recovering.
And in sports, Vin Scully, Dodgers broadcaster for 67 years, died Tuesday night. He was 94.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you, wherever you may be. Pull up a chair as the Dodgers have finally come home.
The man known as the voice of the LA Dodgers died at his home in the Hidden Hills neighborhood of Los Angeles. The team was informed by his family members. They didn't provide a cause of death, though. Scully was the longest tenured broadcaster with a single team in pro sports history. The Dodgers changed players, managers, executives, owners, and even coasts. But Scully and his soothing, insightful style remained a constant for the fans. As a child, he grew up listening to college football games. At age 25, Scully became the youngest person to broadcast a World Series.
Sometimes, it can turn out like that. A childhood passion could lead you to a lifelong career. And in other news, the first cargo ship loaded with grain to leave Ukraine since Russia invaded more than 5 months ago safely crossed the Black Sea and anchored just outside Istanbul yesterday. The vessel is now en route to Lebanon under an agreement Moscow and Kyiv signed last month to unblock Ukraine's agricultural exports to ease a global food crisis. The agreement calls for safe passage through the mined waters outside Ukraine's ports. Footage shows the Razoni carrying over 26,000 tons of corn anchored near the Bosphorus entrance from the Black Sea some 36 hours after departing from Odessa port. An estimated 20 million tons of grain have been stuck in Ukraine since the start of the war. An inspection was completed today in Istanbul by a team of Russian, Ukrainian, Turkish, and UN officials as part of the deal. The checks aim to ensure that incoming vessels are not carrying weapons and that outgoing ones are bearing only grain, fertilizer, or related food items, not any other commodities. More ships from Ukraine are expected to set out in the coming days. Chinese real estate giant Evergrande has failed to meet its self-imposed deadline for the debt restructuring plan it promised. The embattled company was supposed to deliver the preliminary restructuring plan by July 31st. Instead, Evergrande offered some details on preliminary restructuring principles for its offshore debt. That's according to an exchange filing on Friday. The missed deadline is causing further concerns about the future of the world's most indebted developer. Evergrande has $300 billion in liabilities. Analysts worry that a collapse of the company would have far-reaching effects on the broader financial system.
Coming up, Florida sea turtles are experiencing gender imbalance. Most are born female. We take you to find out the reasons.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Welcome back. Florida's sea turtles are grappling with a gender imbalance. Recent heat waves have caused the sand on some beaches to get so hot that nearly every turtle born was female. Let's take a look.
Scientists worry the gender imbalance might affect genetic diversity of the endangered animal and cause a sharp decline in their population. Betty Circleback is the manager of the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, a city in the Florida Keys.
The frightening thing is the last 4 summers in Florida have been the hottest summers on record. The scientists that are studying sea turtle hatchlings and eggs, they have found no boy sea turtles, so only female sea turtles for the past 4 years. There's a study out of Australia that is showing the same thing, that 99% of new sea turtle babies are female.
When female turtle digs a nest on a beach, the temperature of the sand determines the gender of the hatchlings. Instead of determining sex during fertilization, the sex of the sea turtles and alligators depends on the temperature of developing eggs. That's according to the National Oceanographic Atmosphere Administration. If a turtle's eggs incubate below 82 degrees Fahrenheit, the turtle hatchlings will be male. If they incubate above 89 degrees Fahrenheit, they will be female. Melissa Rosales Rodriguez is a turtle keeper at a turtle hospital at the Miami Zoo.
Unfortunate thing as well is that you're looking at, in a nest of about 100, you're looking at potentially only one of those hatchlings making it to adulthood. So if you're only hatching out, let's say for round numbers, 100 eggs, only one is making it. And if you're looking at a 99%, out of those 99%, there was only that one male. So the likelihood of there being an equal distribution, there's significantly more females than males. So over the years, you're going to see a sharp decline in their population because we just don't have the genetic diversity. We don't have the male to female ratio needed in order to be able to have successful breeding sessions and be able to have eggs that hatch out in the long term, especially because since these individuals are so long lived, it takes them a really long time to reach sexual maturity. Some species aren't reaching sexual maturity until they're about 30 or 40.
Learned something new today again. I'm finding out for the first time that temperatures can actually determine gender of an embryo. And I heard that's apparently especially the case for reptiles and fish.
Fascinating, isn't it? And here's another one about the beach. You know that saying, choose a job you love and you never have to work a day in your life? Well, imagine if your job is going on beach vacations. Seriously, Hotels.com is looking to hire a retro beach motelier. The gig involves visiting the site's 10 best retro beach motels across America and taking some pictures for future generations with a classic Polaroid camera. No iPhone cameras here. It's 1950s, remember? To really get into the flashback feel of it all, you'll get some old school accessories like SPF zinc, striped umbrellas, vintage sunnies, a cooler, and even a solar-powered AM/FM radio to enjoy some tunes. Oh, and get this, you'll get a $10,000 stipend to cover expenses and $5,000 for your salary. That's to spend on classic beachside snacks like saltwater taffy, frozen custard, and snow cones. You got until Friday to apply.
Wow, I mean, that sounds better and better, so where do I sign up?
You're not really going to sign up, are you?
I'm kidding, of course. Or am I? Find out if I'm still going to be here tomorrow, because that's all for today's program. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.